YOLO, that's how you get a screw hole basically through a 12-volt plant. NZXT has a new statement about its NZXT H1 PCIe riser fire problem that we talked about in our most recent video. It's on the channel if you haven't seen it. The TLDR of that issue, again, is that we independently discovered the root cause of a fire that could be started by a 12-volt short to ground via the screw through the PCIe riser cable in the NZXT H1. That's the shortest possible version I could do. Watch the second video to learn more and see the process where we proved our work painstakingly. So anyway, NZXT's known about this issue for a little while, but they sort of go back and forth in this new statement talking about how they didn't fully know the root cause, but the nylon screws were a temporary fix. And now they have a probably more correct statement that should have been issued previously. It's late, but they're taking the right moves, and we want to cover it because this is overall a good thing. A little bit of hesitation there just because of how late it is and because the circumstances under which the new statement came out, but it looks like a move in the right direction, and we definitely want to credit NZXT for that. We're going to go through the statement. There's a couple things in there I disagree with, and my team disagrees with, but they all were heading out the door when NZXT sent this statement out. It came out very late on Monday night, but I'll be editing this one and keeping it pretty simple. Okay, let's get into the new statement from NZXT. Before that, this video is brought to you by Thermal Grizzly's Conductonaut liquid metal. Conductonaut is what we've used in all of our liquid metal and delid thermal tests, capable of dropping CPU thermals significantly when replacing the stock thermal interface. Lower CPU thermals don't just allow better overclocks, but also lower noise levels because the transfer efficiency is increased. The mix of gallium and indium makes for a thermal conductivity of 73 watts per meter Kelvin, outclassing traditional pastes significantly. Learn more at the link in the description below. So first of all, this part wasn't in the statement, it was in the email to us from NZXT containing the statement. NZXT provided us an early version of its now public statement about this fire issue, and to be clear, they've had a few public statements about it. This is a new one as of whatever day it is, as of February 2nd, 2021. So new statement. They emailed us and said that they were providing us 1 hour advance notice. This is actually, 1 hour is not a lot of time, but it's actually a very important thing that they're doing because it's about a safety issue. It's about fire, which a fire can cause death, obviously. That's an objectively accurate statement. So because of how important it was, we were trying to treat this sort of like a security disclosure when a company, a researcher maybe finds a flaw with an Intel processor or an AMD processor or whatever, and ideally, you sort of talk behind the scenes, agree on a time when you can talk about this, or at least get a statement in advance that's not just PR. So that's something we complain about in part 2. The important thing is that NZXT is now, at least with this email, was reaching out to us as one of the, in this analogy, researchers of this topic and giving us advance notice. So that's good. It's a good start. NZXT also offered us the new riser as soon as it has it available. So they will have another one, and that's why we're not done talking about this topic yet. All right, so NZXT claims it's working on a formal recall in this statement. To address some confusion that's inevitable here, we saw some comments where people were like, Steve, maybe you didn't see it, NZXT did do a recall. So not really. The statements that NZXT previously made were on NZXT's subreddit. Its community manager posted on the subreddit about a day before our second video with some phrasing involving the word recall. Now, what NZXT did previously was recall the case as in ask for it to be returned from its retail partners to get new ones back to NZXT to be fixed and sent back out to channel. What we were asking for was a formal recall through a government agency, which NZXT says in this statement it's working on. We did contact the relevant government agencies about the issue. But we wanted a formal recall, whereupon NZXT tries its best to collect the potentially dangerous risers from the public to be destroyed so that they don't ever accidentally end up in a home somewhere. So that's what we wanted. That's the difference between when NZXT previously said the word recall, referring to retailers, versus what we were referring to, which is get it the hell out of the field. So anyway, that's something we'll talk about more in a bit. Let's go over the statement in a second. First, overall, short version, we think this statement largely addresses what we wanted, what we laid out in part 2 video, and it's doing it at a very late stage, but it's doing the correct things. Timeline's off, but the actions, or at least what they're presenting as the actions, appear good. So this is good. NZXT does get credit for doing that, and it took it 3 months. It took a very provocative set of videos, especially the second one, but we got there. It starts with, to our community, we are sorry. The nylon screws were not the complete solution for the H1 fire hazard. They didn't address the root cause of the issue. We didn't account for scenarios where someone could replace the nylon screws with metal ones unknowingly. Our execution did not live up to the quality that our community has come to expect from us. This is a good start, and it was the primary point, which is that a metal screw at some point could find its way in there and cause problems. Now, whether NZXT actually listened or is just responding to pressure at this point, the end result is that the correct actions are mostly being taken. Hopefully that means that the owners are more likely to hear about this issue. This was another one of our big concerns, was that a lot of people might have bought this thing in a BLD or from a friend or DIY or whatever. DIY, you're more likely to hear about it, but if you buy it and then you stop paying attention because you build a computer once every 3 years, you do your research, you buy your stuff, and then you move on and play your games, we were concerned that people might never hear about the issue and have a hazard sitting next to them for several years or until it burns. So the more attention that this gets, the better, and it's good that NZXT is giving this the attention that it now deserves. NZXT continued saying, quote, "We will be removing the H1 from the NZXT store and NZXT BLD. We're going to send out redesigned PCIe Gen 3 riser assemblies for current H1s, and we're going to help with installation for those who need it. Going forward, we're instituting more robust and thorough design processes. From the initial designs, QA, to additional testing, we're committed to quality in both our products and our response to your concerns." NZXT mentioned our content in there as well, which we obviously appreciate. But okay, so NZXT says that it's implementing more robust and thorough design processes, and honestly, I believe that. I do think that's what's happening. I've known the founder of NZXT for quite some time. NZXT was one of the earliest companies we worked with. And I personally have a lot of experience working with Johnny, the founder of NZXT, and we've met up a lot, we've talked a lot about the industry, so I believe this. And I'm not quite sure, what has been happening behind the scenes the last few years as NZXT has grown. I've gotten the sense from my position that perhaps NZXT's upper management and leadership has gotten a little bit more hands-off with time, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on who's below you. And we had the sense that maybe there was a little bit sort of a shift in quality as a result of the management approach, but we don't work there, so I'm not fully up to speed on that. But that's the sense I got of it. That said, there's still a significant problem here, which is that how this happened to begin with is sort of unfathomable to me, because the first person, even just building a system in the office, and the first person, when they built the system, as they inserted the screw, should have said, that doesn't seem normal for the screw to carve a hole into the PCB. Let's maybe stop. And if you're thinking, well, the NZXT BLD team probably gets the case of the riser pre-installed, they're not going to notice. That's fair. But before the NZXT BLD team, the design team should be getting samples in. I mean, we do that for our own products. Our mouse mats and toolkits and whatever, by the way, you can use code "This Is Fine" on the store for 10% off. But our products, we get in multiple samples, and I'll cut through them, I'll open them up, I'll disassemble them, and we do testing on them, like salt spray testing, all kinds of stuff before we ever start selling it. So for something like an electronic, an advanced piece of computer hardware, like a case with a riser and a power supply, relatively advanced thing to sell, it seems odd that no one noticed this. So NZXT does need those processes in place, and hopefully it is putting them there. Short of it is that this was entirely avoidable if they had one person in design, a PM or someone like that, who actually built this thing and took it apart and rebuilt it. They would have noticed that there's a screw going through the PCB, and shorting a 12 volt to ground through a screw is not something we would expect a test technician or necessarily QA to detect, especially because NZXT probably bought this PCB from a supplier, almost certainly. And it's possible that NZXT said, hey supplier, we need a hole in this location to mount it in our case tooling that we've already made. Can you put a hole there? And the supplier might have said, YOLO, zzz, and then that's how you get what you get, which is a screw hole basically through a 12 volt plane. Let's move on. Next part says, I have an H1. What do I do now? 1, we will be automatically sending the updated PCIe Gen 3 riser assembly to anyone who requested a nylon screw kit. If you do not want the cable, we will ask that you opt out via this form, and they link a form. 2, if you have an H1 and have not requested your replacement screws, please head to this form now and request a full repair kit. This will include the nylon screws and the updated PCIe Gen 3 riser assembly. 3, if you need additional support to install these fixes, please make sure to note that to our customer service team. You can head to the site and submit a support ticket or email us h1support@nzxt.com. They also provide a phone number and operating hours. Now, first off, this is something I want to address to actually a different audience, not to NZXT, but rather to the purchasers of the NZXT H1, or maybe just viewers who don't own one, but saw the content. So we saw some people who were maybe sad or upset that NZXT said it's supplying a PCIe Gen 3 riser and not a PCIe Gen 4 riser. And we'd like to point out that not only do Gen 4 risers take longer to make, they also take longer to QC. Do we really want NZXT to do that? Do we want them to rush something that's harder to make and takes longer to QC? Because can't say who they are, but we know a couple companies who've been trying to make a Gen 4 riser for like a year now, and they've had a lot of roadblocks. So anyway, that's part one of the problem with demanding a Gen 4 riser. It's not a fast solution. And if it is fast, it might be a dangerous solution, and we're back to where we started. They're also more expensive, to be fair to NZXT, and they're not what was included in the original product. So we completely agree with NZXT's decision to make a Gen 3 cable. It's faster to make, it's more likely to be done correctly, because there are a lot more suppliers out there who have a lot more experience with them. Yes, it's ultimately a riser card, it's a PCB and a cable. They don't change that much. But the factories that offer a Gen 4 riser that can actually hit the spec are more limited than the factories that offer a Gen 3 riser. And so it just seems safer for everyone involved for them to focus on Gen 3. Secondly, there is a bone to pick that I have with the viewers or owners who are demanding a Gen 4 riser. It's okay, I guess, to be upset about it. It does come across as greedy, though, as a consumer, where when you purchased the product, you knowingly purchased it with a Gen 3 riser. You unknowingly got a Gen 3 riser with a fire hazard. NZXT is now offering to provide a Gen 3 riser without the fire hazard. So you're getting what you expected originally. They really don't owe you more unless it burned up your GPU, your motherboard, or your house. And then, well, go talk to a lawyer. But the real problem here is not that it's not Gen 4. The problem is that it was capable of shorting to ground. So that's all NZXT needs to fix. They don't need to provide more. I'm not saying that you should just simply be happy with the Gen 3 riser and move on or something, because this was a very serious issue and it shouldn't have happened. But to ask for more is maybe not the right thing right now. Additionally, we like that this riser is opt-out and not opt-in. This is really great news. It's the correct thing to do. I really wish NZXT did this like a week ago. But whatever, it's here now, so opt-out is good. It means people who don't know about the issue, haven't heard it, haven't seen our stuff, are likely to end up getting one anyway. FAQ, why did NZXT take so long to address the PCIe riser issue? They said this PCIe riser is custom. We started the redesign on it in November after we discovered the flaw and originally planned to ship it with the H1s as a process update. We've now updated that plan with much more urgency and direct service to H1 owners. We felt confident that the nylon screws were a viable, long-term fix to the issue. We now realize that it isn't good enough. We need to address the root cause for the lifetime of the product. That last sentence is basically what we were saying in the whole part 2 video. This has to be addressed forever, not for the current owner with a nylon screw. It needs to be addressed for as long as this thing's gonna be in the field. It's good that NZXT said this. Now, there's one problem with this statement. It's completely contradictory. So this is where we get into some disagreement with what NZXT is saying. The statement is completely contradictory because, and probably NZXT shouldn't have said this, but NZXT said, quote, we started the redesign in November after we discovered the flaw. Then it said, we felt confident that the nylon screws were a viable long-term fix to the issue. Those are two completely contradictory statements. If you know about the issue and you understand the issue, that part being key, then you can't possibly think that the nylon screws are a long-term fix. And if both of those things are true, then someone shouldn't be designing electronics. So it's just, there's minimally a bending of the truth in one of these two comments. Perhaps best case is that NZXT knew the riser was a problem, but didn't know what the problem was. which is possible. It was very difficult to diagnose. It took us a couple of weeks, I guess, if you combine both videos together. That's about the time it was. It cost me a couple grand in employee time just for us to all diagnose it together. So gives you an idea that it's difficult, but this is a fire hazard. It's something that NZXT should have had as top priority since whatever their first tip was that there was a problem there. So to say that they knew there was a problem, but they thought the nylon screw was a permanent fix or whatever, long-term fix, in addition to the statement that NZXT said they now realize they aren't good enough, is what makes us a little confused about how all these things can be true. Maybe it's just a matter of Hanlon's razor or something. Next, what happened with the PCIe riser assembly? Our design, engineering, and QA processes missed an incorrect clearance on the 12-volt power plane and the PCIe riser assembly PCB. This can cause a fire hazard if the mounting screw contacts the 12-volt power plane and the PCB. So that's cool. They seem to have reached the same conclusion that we did. It's something we showed in the video when we had that microscope image of the exposed 12-volt plane. Next, are the nylon screws a fix? They say yes. No. But anyway, the nylon screw fix kit fixes the problem. No, it doesn't, but it does not address the root cause. If the nylon screws are ever replaced with metal ones, there will be a risk of a fire hazard. Why are you doing this if the nylon screws fix the problem? We want to prevent any danger from coming back in the case where someone replaces the nylon screws with metal screws in the future. The goal is to ensure safety for the lifetime of the product. This is all good, but just to address this didn't fix the problem. NZXT says that, I think it was 3 times in this statement alone, if not more. They don't fix the problem. NZXT needs to stop saying they fixed the problem. There's a risk it misleads someone. So to be really clear, trying to give them credit for doing the right thing, but I'm not going to let them get away with bending words. And it is not a fix. The problem is still there. They're tweaking the language. So they work around the problem, the screws that is, they don't fix it, and repeatedly claiming they fix it is disingenuous and could potentially mislead someone who's not as engaged with this issue to come to the wrong conclusion. So seeing these headers multiple times in one post could definitely lead to confusion. Next part, why is it taking so long for customers to get the nylon screw repair kit? They said, we underestimated the scale of the effort. Our teams were initially overwhelmed with requests. We've been increasing our team capacity to improve response times. Next, how long is it going to take to get this fix? We should have the PCIe riser assembly shipping by end of March, and we'll keep you updated on its status. Now, that might seem like a long time, but just to give some context here, this isn't really something that they can rush through any faster for more global logistics reasons, which is that Lunar New Year, or Chinese New Year, colloquially, just started. And when in Taiwan, you're talking about maybe about a week off on average during this holiday. In China, because of the fact that a lot of the factory workers are from different regions and there's traveling involved, and it's normally kind of a time to see family, you might have 3 weeks to a month off for the factory floor or for most of the factory floor staff. We know this from personal experience from visiting factories around that timeline and also from working with factories ourselves for manufacturing. So this isn't something they can simply speed up for anyone who is upset about the timeline. Our suggestion to you would still be to remove the riser from your case if you have one and get a different one in there, or get a different case if you can't wait that long. It does suck. It definitely sucks to have a case where you don't want the riser in it, but you need it to use the computer. So your solutions are invest more money and buy a new riser, pursue a refund, by which point you receive one, maybe they have the riser shipping, or stop using it. Next part, why did you put the H1 on sale without the new riser? The nylon screw kit fixes the problem. However, it does not address the root cause. We've since removed the H1 from nzxt.com and letsbuild.com until the new PCIe riser assembly is available. No, it doesn't. It does not fix the problem. Please stop saying that. It's a workaround. If I have a Ford Pinto, I park it in my driveway, and I resolve to never drive it again, that doesn't fix the fact that if an acorn falls on it too hard, the gas tank might spontaneously combust. It's not a fix. Just me not driving it is working around the fact that it might spontaneously combust when an acorn falls on it. So this isn't, I just really want to make sure the wrong message isn't delivered here. It's not a fix. It's a workaround. And if people glance at this post and see fix next to nylon screws 4 or 5 times or whatever it is, then they might get the wrong impression if they're not doing some due diligence in reading. And to some extent, that's the reader's fault for not taking enough care. But at the same time, there is a responsibility that has to be exercised by the author of the post. We know this because we deal with this in publication, where you have to assume that people are not going to consume the content correctly. And so you need to make it as easy as possible to deliver the core message, which is get this thing out of your system and get our replacement in once it's ready. All right, this continues. Can I return my H1? They say if you purchased your H1 from NZXT or Build, then we'll honor any request to return it for a full refund. And they say if you run into issues with another retailer, please contact our customer service team. This is good. Hopefully it's true. We have had a couple of people reach out and forward support threads where they were denied refunds. These were previous ones. Maybe this has changed. If you're one of those people, try contacting them again. It sounds like they're saying that they'll refund it this time. They say, will you proceed with a formal recall? We've been working closely with the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission towards a formal recall since November. We'll share this directly with you as soon as the official recall is announced by the CPSC. So that's the news then. Our thoughts, my thoughts, since my team left by the time this statement was ready, are all in between their comments. I think that pretty much recaps how we as a team would feel about it. The conclusions are the same. Get rid of the riser if you have it. One thing we'd like to add is you should probably destroy it. Take it upon yourself to just cut it in half or something. If you do that, do it outside or where there's good ventilation. PCB dust is bad. Be careful cutting with a Dremel or something, for example. Probably don't do that. But destroy it. And then bring it to an electronics, an e-waste recycler, so that it's never used again. But beyond that, statements mostly remain the same. The biggest takeaway here is that NZXT is working on a new riser. It'll be ready end of March or around then. We are expecting to get one. Because of Chinese New Year happening right about now, I don't know if they're going to have an early sample, like an engineering sample to send me or not. My plan is to do the same testing we did here, and probably, if we have sufficient time, send it out for X-ray analysis and go layer by layer and compare that to the original one and see how they look. And the reason I want to do that is because if NZXT is actually rectifying this issue and really fixing it, then I think, I don't say this in a, like as if to say no one else can do this, but I think we're probably the best opportunity for covering this in a manner which will satisfy the question of, okay, is it actually safe now? And the only reason I say that is because we've had a lot of experience testing this thing. And at this point, I'd like to get it X-ray analyzed, the new one that is, just so that we can make sure, all right, even if we use this thing sort of ham-fistedly, is there enough clearance around the screw hole now, like there should be, like a millimeter of clearance, that you're not going to clip into a 12-volt plane or something. So that's the plan, and if it comes back clean, great. But if not, we'll certainly know it objectively and without needing to spend 2 weeks trying with different riser kits. So that's the plan from our end. Now, some quick important history, I think, on NZXT and GN. Just to share this, seems like a good time, but we've been working together a long time. NZXT is one of the first companies, again, that works with us on the review side. Two things here. One, we don't owe anyone anything, especially if they're going to cause fires. Let's make that very clear. Obviously, in part 2, we made that pretty clear that it's not like there's no quid pro quo. And the reason I say that is there was a Twitter user or actually a YouTube commenter who seemed to think that because NZXT worked with us when we were much smaller, we owe them to just brush this under the rug and pretend it didn't happen, which is absolutely not true. And we made that very clear in part 1 and 2. The real point I want to make, though, is that I've personally seen NZXT as a company grow a lot. They've changed direction, they've shifted paradigms. There was a period where NZXT CEO Johnny and I were sitting down at lunch when there was an event nearby, and he was telling me all these plans about how he wants to really drive the software side of the company. I've got this idea for software, it's called whatever it was at the time, and then it became CAM. So we've seen a lot of growth in the company, and what has troubled me for the past couple of years is that in the time that I've been working in this industry, which is, well, since 2007 or 8, but I started working on the computer hardware side of things, I don't know, 2012 or something more seriously. So since then, I've seen NZXT go from a very tightly built, competent team that produced generally pretty good products. The H440 really pushed the industry in a new direction with case design, and the S340 did the same thing. You start seeing clones of these cases. They might not pass our tests today, but for the time, they did a lot of really important ease of installation, build quality features, things like that other companies weren't doing. So NZXT has a history of pretty strong products. The early Kraken series coolers were pretty damn good. And so the troubling part has been over the last couple of years specifically. We saw with Build when we reported on their customer service and it was woefully inept. And we saw now with the riser issue that NZXT perhaps has an issue of product engineering or management, and separately an issue of public relations, media relations, and customer relations. So these are two very core problems for two primary pillars that hold the company up. And NZXT still makes stuff that's worth buying, but they've just exhibited a lot of really fundamental issues the last couple of years specifically. I hope that this statement is, and this is a wider statement I'm making right now than just this fire issue, but I hope this latest statement from NZXT's fire response thing is genuine, and I hope that it turns NZXT around as a company. Perhaps this is the wake-up call that NZXT needed to realize that, hey, posting stupid memes on Twitter isn't the only thing that makes a company successful. And we hope that they realize this and kind of not necessarily go back to the old ways, because those might not work today, but go back to the old fundamentals. And that might involve more hands-on management from leadership at the company, but I don't know how hands-on they are now. Maybe they're already hands-on, in which case it requires new staff or new approaches or new paradigms. But really hope to see NZXT go back to the strong place it was when I first started covering them, because I felt like Johnny was really personally engaged with his company. I thought he really had good vision at the time when we talked, when he was talking about all of his new ideas. This is before Cam even. And I remember arguing with him a little bit about going software driven and saying, like, are you sure? You guys make these cases, they're pretty good. But anyway, hope to see NZXT get back to that really strong position in terms of team competence that it was in previously, because they've done a lot of good stuff, but this was a pretty serious fuck up, and it needs to be treated like a serious fuck up. And hopefully it's a learning point for NZXT, and hopefully nobody gets injured or loses anything like a house to it. But it's out there now, everyone should know, and make sure you tell your friends if they bought an H1 and they don't follow hardware news. So I'm gonna leave it there. I don't have any further commentary until I get the new riser. It's possible that it's also screwed, but that's kind of funny. But we'll see once we get it. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. You can go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly. We have code THISISFINE there for until February 3rd, or patreon.com/gamersnexus. We'll see you all next time.